We're making bubbles, lots of bubbles. We did a show and a party a couple weeks ago. I apologize. I filmed the entire show. It's 30 minutes long. I did post it, and the lighting is terrible. In person, it looked good. On video, looked like crap. I feel bad about that because I wanted a better video. Such is life. I'm going to leave the video up so you can see it, but like the top of my head and just things didn't show up. The lighting, there's a light directly above my head and messed up the video. Bummer. But the highlight, they did love the magic. The bubbles were the highlight. I'm going to teach how to make the bubble juice and how to make different wands. I will put timestamps so you can skip around to the sections you want to watch. You may want to watch the whole thing. You may want to come back to just the recipe or a certain wand. Have at it. Real quick, look, I got a new badge. I just had this made. I love it. It's goes on with a magnet, so it's really easy and it's crafty because I like my own crafts. So I'm Crafty the Clown. Anyway, today we're learning about bubbles, how to make the bubble stuff, how to make the wands. I'll talk about some different recipes and a website where you can go find way more information than you ever thought existed on bubbles. The recipe I'm going to share comes from the Soap Bubble Wiki. Yes, there's a wiki on soap bubbles. It's like soap bubble fandom. Link is down below, and I'll try and put it up here if I remember. I have done bubbles and bubble wands since the 1980s. Back in the 80s, I was at a festival and someone told me their secret recipe, it included glycerin to give strength to the bubbles. Going back to my cooking days, because I always think of everything in the kitchen, mixing just the bubble stuff of just like dish soap and water, that's like amateur. Mixing the dish soap, water, and glycerin is like home cook. I found the chef recipe finally. There are two different recipes. I'm using Guar Gum. It's Guar, Guar Gum, because it is easy to get here and it is cheap. The other secret ingredient is J Lube, the letter J, lube. It is a, how can I put this politely? It's a veterinary lubricant sold through veterinary. You can get it on like Amazon. It's more expensive. I can't get it here. I'd have to ship it in. So I bought the Guar Gum. Online, there's a debate. Each school of thought. The J-Lube people say theirs is the best. The Guar Gum people say theirs is the best. From reading about them and looking at pictures and some of the way too much science behind it, they seem to be about the same. Or your weather conditions and air pollution can make a difference. So there doesn't seem to be a major difference between the two. These people swear by Guar Gum. These people swear by J-Lube. I've used the Guar Gum and it works well. I have not used the J-Lube. They're probably similar. You're just trying to add a polymer to strengthen the bubbles. I will put the recipe on here as a note. You can screen capture it if you want, or you can go down into the description, highlight the entire recipe, and save it as a document file. Or you can go to the Soap Bubble Wiki and just get all the stuff you want. So any way you want to do it. Super, super easy recipe. I'm going to mix it up in my kitchen sink. It's going to take about 5 minutes. The recipe I use makes 1 gallon. It's supposed to be 1 gallon of hot water. And when they say hot, they mean like tap water, water heater, hot, not boiling. We don't have water heaters. We're on well water and we have a heater for the shower, but the rest of the house is on just well water. It is whatever temperature it is. So what I do is I measure out 1 gallon. I'm actually using 4 liters because I'm using 2 Coke bottles. It's close enough. The recipe is not exact. It's not like baking. Uh, so I get two 2-liter bottles of Coke. I pour 1.5 into the jug, and then I pour half, which is 1 liter, half a bottle, into our kettle and heat it up to boiling. When I pour that in, that makes the whole thing warm. So it works. I save some out. I save about a cup of water out and keep it in the kettle because I'm going to need it in another step. But mostly it's a gallon of water. They say you're supposed to get a gallon, take out half a cup so you can make up with that with the half cup of soap. I never bother removing the half cup of water. It honestly doesn't seem to matter. I don't go that, it's not that precise because, as I said, depending on your region and your weather, you will have to vary the recipe slightly. 1 gallon of water, half a cup of soap, teaspoon of guar gum dissolved into a slurry in alcohol and then in hot water, and then 2 teaspoons of baking powder, not baking soda. Now, the baking powder is to lower the pH of the recipe. When you add it in, the color will change a lot. So if you're using like blue soap or green soap, it's really dark. You add that baking powder, it lightens it a lot more than you'd think. It really does lighten the color quite a bit. But as it sits, it does its magic. And then one of the ingredients in baking powder is cornstarch. Cornstarch is not going to dissolve. It's going to settle down. You have a layer of white powder in the bottom of your jug. It does not affect the recipe. If it bothers you, you can pour it into another bottle and leave the white stuff to rinse it out. You can shake it back in, or you can just ignore it. I just ignore it. It's going to settle out, and it's not a problem. So just know that in advance. I start with the water and the half cup of soap. Mix them. I try and do as much of my mixing under the surface so I'm not making a lot of splashes. You don't want to make a lot of foam because then you got to wait for the foam to pop before you can put it in the bottle. So I put it under the water and swish it around, get it pretty clean. Cleanup's easy because everything is soap. You want to mix it thoroughly, but not over agitate it so you don't make a lot of foam. Once the soap is in, I get the guar gum. It's a teaspoon of the powder. I use 1.5 teaspoons because of my neighborhood. I have found I use a little extra. This is the polymer that gives it the strength to make the large bubbles. When you play with it, when you first make it, sometimes they don't work, or it makes them big, but they don't last. So you have to kind of work with it a little bit for your conditions. All the information is on the Wiki. They say to mix the guar gum with alcohol. It kind of makes it, I forget the word they use, but it kind of separates it out and keeps it from clumping up when you add the water. I don't know. I do it because they say do it. Doesn't seem like it does anything, but they say add a couple tablespoons of alcohol, so I do. Mix it up, add in the hot water, and as you stir that, it's heat activated. So real quick, it's just this watery white liquid that turns into like jelly. It firms up a lot. Then I put it in the jug, stir in extra water just to kind of start thinning it out. Once I've got it thinned out, I pour it out into the jug, stir it in. Again, try not to agitate it too much. Got to let it sit for a few minutes because you want the guar gum to hydrate and mix thoroughly. If you go too quick and jug it, you'll start getting big clumps of guar gum settled to the bottom. So stir it in, let it sit for a minute, stir it in again. Once you've got the guar gum, you just dump in the baking powder. And as I said, the color will change a lot. Doesn't matter what color it is anyway. That changes the pH. The guar gum gives it the polymer. So between the two of them, the pH is somehow supposed to make them last longer. So the guar gum, the polymer, lets them get larger. Baking powder, they say, by lowering the pH, makes it heal better. So when you're making the bubble, it's actually trying to separate off the device you're blowing it, comes off and has to seal back together. So it gives it that sealing strength, which also, if it's really strong, you can catch it and blow bubbles inside the bubbles. I have not gotten that yet. Either my bubbles aren't strong enough or I just don't know how to do it. I try it and they just pop. I'm working on it. It's something to do. Once you've got it mixed, you want to pour it into whatever your containers are. This recipe you can use immediately. You can let it sit, you can store it, you can wait till next month, you can use it right away. Doesn't matter. The J-Lube recipe is a whole different recipe, and you make a concentrate. And then you take that concentrate and you mix it with water. The concentrate will last pretty much forever. Then you just mix it with water as you need it. The Guar Gum does not do well as a concentrate. It mixes with the water. It does its job. So does the baking powder. If you try and add more water to it later, you're just going to mess it up. So you mix it up full recipe. It can sit around and be used, but it does not make a concentrate. I've done it to where I used it immediately. I've had it where it sat for a couple of weeks and I've used it. I saw no difference in how the bubbles worked. So it can sit. It's not a problem. To pour it, I just use a funnel and pour it into the bottle. Problem is, as it's splashing, it starts making foam and you end up with half a bottle of foam. So this, I just made this yesterday. I got a hose to put on the end of the funnel. Had to heat it with a lighter to soften the hose, push it up on the funnel, and super glued it in place. If it doesn't work, I've wasted a funnel. I think it'll work. Spoiler alert, it works. The hose goes down into the bottle. I wish it was about 2 or 3 inches longer, so it would be at the very bottom. But it's okay. You pour it in, and as soon as the liquid goes over the hose, you're no longer splashing. So this was a good idea, I think. I came up with this. So now you're filling the jug without making splashing, so you're not making as much foam. Otherwise, you fill it up, let it sit for a couple hours till the foam goes away, and you can add more. And it's really a hassle. So this is a much better way to do it. 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever, you're done. This is so easy. Follow the recipe exactly, and went outside to test it. The bubbles were forming big, but popping generally as I'm trying to close the wand to get it, the bubble to separate, it would pop. It couldn't seal itself. So I started adjusting the little extra baking powder. My recipe says 2 teaspoons. I use 2.5 because here, that's what I use. Same with the Guar Gum. My recipe calls for 1 teaspoon. I use 1.5 because that's what works better here. We're 80 degrees, 80% humidity, filthy air. It's full of smoke, dirt, dust. So bubbles have a hard life here. Depending on where you are, air quality, temperature, humidity, follow the recipe exactly, and then maybe play with it as needed. You don't make major adjustments. The water and the soap are probably going to stay the same. You just kind of have to play with the polymer and the pH. So you just adjust the Guar Gum and the baking powder as needed. Once I got it working, we were ready for the party. I did make some ginormous bubbles. My wife did not video any of it. Unfortunately, we have some photos, no video. The big bubbles are super impressive. I love them. Grown-ups love them. Kids go, wow, pop, and then the bubble is gone. One bubble does not last very long. So the giant bubble, while impressive, is not that big a deal to the kids. So I have one that makes a nest of bubbles, makes tons of bubbles. That one they liked, and they would run around and pop all the bubbles. For the giant bubbles, you want just a big triangle of rope on sticks. I've seen people use the extendable fishing rods, the little carbon fiber fishing rods that extend out so you can close them up for storage. That's pretty good. I was going to order those, But one of the helpers grabbed a piece of bamboo and carved me some sticks. So I've got 3-foot long bamboo sticks. On the end of the stick, I tied carabiners. And then I put loops on the different ropes so I can change out for the type of bubble. I have one set of wands, and I have right now 2 different bubble makers. I start with about 9 feet, so it's 3 feet on each side to make a triangle. First, remove the core from the rope. The rope is good because it soaks up extra juice. You will waste a lot of juice, but you need all that extra juice to make these giant bubbles. And then as you close it, you'll get more soap. You reopen it, you can make more. So you don't dip as often, and you get more bubbles per dip. When you tie it together at the end, I take about 9 feet, I put a nut on the end of it to give it some weight, and that's going to be the bottom corner. On the top 2 corners, I tie a loop. That way I can hook it onto the carabiners of my handle. For the ginormous bubbles, you use just the triangle. And this is a big open giant bubble. For the nested bubbles, that big puffy nest, I take the triangle, I take the core of the rope, and I zigzag it around, and I make like a net. So I have all these extra places holding the soap to make tons and tons of bubbles. Those are really easy to make and very impressive. The giant bubbles, like I said, the grown-ups all go, wow. Even the kids go, wow, but then they just want to pop them. So that net where I do the crisscross works much better for the kids. I do a couple big ones so they can be impressed, and then I give them the bubbles that they can pop so they can have fun, because that's what it's all about. Those are super easy to make. Use whatever you want for the handles. Wooden dowels, broomsticks. Like I said, those extendable fishing rods. You can buy them online super cheap. They're terrible fishing rods, but they're good for crafts. I also made a large round bubble thing. This was actually the first one I made, and I put it on a handle. You can use just the wire, but if you look at the plastic bubble wands, you'll see they have like a bunch of excess plastic on it. It's not just decorative. That gives it something to hold on to, so it holds more juice, so you can blow more bubbles. So even your little cheap plastic wands, you'll look at it, the handle side is plain, the big top side has teeth on it, basically. Well, you can use plain wire, but it's not going to hold much. So I have the wire, and I wrap twine around it. Cotton twine soaks up extra bubble stuff, so it works kind of like the rope. So I made a circle, wrapped it with the twine, and then it wasn't strong enough with my original recipe. The new recipe would work, but this one wouldn't, so I crisscrossed it with the twine, and so it makes more bubbles, which again, that's what the kids want anyway. Then I made 15 for the kids. I took an ibuprofen bottle, wrapped some wire around it, and fanned it out. I have to get a picture. I thought I had one I could show you, but they seem to have all been gone. I guess the kids took them. But I just made the little wire, I wrapped string around it, and then taped it to a tongue depressor, a little craft stick. The ibuprofen bottle just happened to be the right size. And then you can open it different directions depending on the shape you want. I opened it like this at first and they were okay, but then I saw if you open it the other way, it remains flat on the bottom, which for what I wanted works better. Change it up for however you want your wand to work. And as I said, the wire works by itself but doesn't hold a lot of juice. So I take some twine, wrap it around all the loops. I just wrap it tight enough to stay on, but not like real tight. I want it kind of loose. And then when you get done, you just tie the 2 ends together. It's very simple. I did 15 of these. That way they could all kind of take turns. Some making bubbles, some popping bubbles, and they got passed around from kid to kid. It was actually fine because, like I said, they enjoy making them, but they prefer popping them. You try and get them to keep it smooth and just dip it nicely, but they always swish it around and make a bunch of foam because they think the foam is going to work better, and they will ruin their bubble juice. That's okay. That's what kids do. It's just going to happen. Once they're wrapped, I kind of fold it a little bit to attach the stick to the end and let it be down farther so it will dip nicely into the soap without splashing and making a bunch of foam. I use one piece to hold it on, then kind of wrap a little more just to get it to stay on better. Duct tape's not ideal, but as I said, I'm doing these just real quick and easy for the kids to have something to use. I have made these with good wire, a soldering iron, and really built nice ones. Drill a hole in a stick, put the wire in the end of the stick. You can make really good ones, but this was just knocking out 15 of them for the party. They're really cheap, but they lasted long enough to get through the party, so that's all that mattered. I wouldn't sell these, but for just throwing them out for the kids to use in the yard, they're perfect. I made 15 of them because it's so funny. You could see the kids. There was this little bitty kid, and she wanted to make bubbles so bad, so bad. And she makes the bubbles, and she's so excited. You can see her face like, I made this, but I did that. And she was so proud. And then all the kids ran over and popped it, and you could see the whole little story going in her head. She was like, wait a minute. What just happened? They had all the fun. So real quick, she dropped the wand and went back to popping bubbles because she realized very quickly making the bubbles is kind of neat once. Popping the bubbles is what life is all about. So it was just so funny because it was like a little 4-year-old. You could see the whole conversation going in her eyes of she made it, and her eyes lit up like, I did this. And all the kids ran over and popped it. What do you expect? Party went very well. The bubbles were a huge hit. And a couple of the kids even, they decided they didn't like the little one. They grabbed the sticks, one kid on each stick, and they would dip that string and then they would run around with it. Didn't work quite as well, but they had fun. Oh, a bonus on that using the rope. That big round one needs a big container. The rope packs up small. You could dip that rope in any type of cup. And when you come up, it's got soap on it. So the rope's even easier. One trick I learned on it is when you come up, you want to like let all that soap drip off so you're not wasting the soap. Don't do that. You want to, don't. Because somehow you're losing so much of the soap, it doesn't work. So you've got to pick it up and go straight into the bubbles. It makes bigger bubbles. You will use a lot more juice, but you're not going to make giant bubbles without using juice. And this stuff's so easy to make. I knock out a couple gallons of it in 5 minutes. It's cheap. It's easy. Hey, just like me. Hey, watch it. It's a family channel. So when you dip that rope, you go straight up and start making it and start doing the bubbles. If you sit there and let it drip off like you really want to, you're not going to get good bubbles. So you have to just go straight into it, and you'll see soap just pouring off of it on the ground. You are wasting a ton of soap. It's the only way to make it work, so do it. By the time you're done, you're going to be coated in soap and sweat. Anyway, it makes your shower later that much more effective. Hope you found this useful. Go to the Wiki for more information. The recipe's down in the description. And I will be writing all this up over on the blog, FreeMagicFun.com. I've got a new badge. Now I got to make a costume. That's another video. For more detailed instructions and pictures, please visit the blog at FreeMagicFun.com. Keep practicing.